the spring of 2024, in my own riding in Mount Royal, the Jewish Community Center, the Holocaust Museum, the Jewish Public Library were surrounded by demonstrators. They were surrounded by demonstrators yelling hateful things. They were surrounded by demonstrators carrying signs, some of which supported terrorist organizations. And yet, the police failed to arrest people. They failed to stop what was a demonstration that descended into illegality. And they said at the time, well, we don't have clear enough instructions, we don't have clear enough rules related to when a demonstration outside of a community center or a school or a temple or a church or a synagogue has crossed that line. The Combating Hate Act makes clear that these buildings deserve special protection and that it creates new intimidation and obstruction offenses related to protests outside of community centers, places of worship, and schools, that make clear that these buildings deserve special protection. It makes clear that you cannot intimidate someone from entering that building to hear a speaker that they want to hear, or to worship as they want to worship, or to attend their classes. It makes clear you cannot instruct people from entering or leaving the building, as happened that night in March of 2024. And at the time, I called for this change to the criminal law. J'ai dit que si les polices m'ont dit qu'ils ne sont pas capables d'agir, le Parlement du Canada a un devoir d'agir, de réécrire la loi criminelle pour être plus claire, pour donner plus d'outils aux policiers. La même chose s'est arrivée avec M. Charkaoui, que dans les rues de Montréal, a dit des choses qui étaient absolument haineuses, mais les procureurs n'ont pas agi.
Ils pouvaient pas.
And we ended up in a situation where this House set up a committee. I had asked for the Justice and Human Rights Committee to study anti-Semitism. We did. And in December of 2024, we put out a unanimous report on most issues. Yes, there was a dissent, but the dissent did not dissent on the vast majority of issues, including that intimidation and obstruction offense. But that has not stopped what the Prime Minister himself called the crisis of anti-Semitism that has overwhelmed the Western world, including Canada, where over 70% of religious-based hate offenses are against the Jewish community that makes up 1.2% of the population, where a Jewish Canadian has a 19 times greater chance of having a hate crime committed against them than the average Canadian. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to point out that 2 weeks ago, there was an attack, or at least an attempted arson attack, on a temple in Westmount, Temple Emmanuel, where I joined the Minister of Canadian Identity, former Senator Mark Gold, the Secretary of State for Youth, to support the community at services. And this law has a standalone hate provision that can be used alongside the arson charges that gentleman will face to make sure that the person who is charged will be able to face more jail time than previously. We also, Mr. Chair, Mr. Speaker, in this bill, have provisions to say that when you fly terrorist symbols, when you fly the Nazi Hasenkreuz, or the SS Bolt, or now the noose that was added by the Senate in their recent amendment, in a way that inspires hate against the community, that now that is easily charged by police. And the only arguments that I've heard to date against a bill that offers greater protection for minority communities across this country And for majority communities, by the way, it offers greater protections to Christians as well, who are a majority.
That's right.
But it delivers protections to all religious faiths. It delivers protections to the LGBTQ plus community, to indigenous communities, to other communities that face hate. So why would anyone be against it? Why would anyone be against this bill? The number one reason that I've heard is, well, the law is not being enforced, just enforce the existing law. As if the federal government was responsible for the enforcement of the criminal code. That, Mr. Speaker, is something that is in the hands of the provinces. The decisions on whether to charge people are made by local municipal police in most cases and provincial prosecutors, not the federal government. So the argument that we shouldn't give police the tools they say they need to prosecute these crimes because we should just tell them to do what they're supposed to do, it doesn't wash, because it's essentially saying the federal government should do nothing. We have the ability to write the criminal code, and we are doing so. And what we can do with this bill that has been enacted, and with the new sentencing and bail reform bill that has just received royal assent, we can now, as the Minister of Public Safety confirmed, go to the provinces and territories, have a PT meeting with the provinces and territories, and say that we need to act together to train police and prosecutors. We need specialized hate prosecutors across this country to be named by the provinces. And we need, most importantly, to have prosecutorial directives or other measures where police are told by the provincial attorney generals how they should prosecute these crimes. And this should be consistent across this country. The passing of these flurry of justice bills is an opportunity for us. I also want to address a couple of misinformations that I heard earlier today in the debate. There was one member that talked about, well, parents are worried about what they can say at the dinner table. Private discussions, Mr. Speaker, are not covered under the willful promotion of hate provisions under Section 319 of the Criminal Code. To have members tell people that they have to worry about what they say at their dinner table is knowingly false. It's not true. Number two, there were claims that the government would go out there and charge people. Somehow one minister's comments would lead to a government that could go out and say that people should be charged. But of course, Mr. Speaker, we live in a system where you have independent prosecutors working with police that make these decisions. They are not influenced by what a government person tells them to do or not do in that case, in any individual case. The only way for the government to have its view is prosecutorial directives that apply to entire class of people, which would come from the provincial attorney generals, not the federal one usually. And so, Mr. Speaker, I'm kind of shocked to hear these claims that are so far out of reality that it diminishes what we're trying to do in the law. Finally, Mr. Speaker, let me be absolutely clear. We also inserted a provision for greater clarity to make clear that this is the case, but we shouldn't have had to do that because it's obvious it's not the case. People will not be charged because they read the Bible or quote the Bible or preach the Bible or the Quran or the Torah or any other holy book. This is entirely made up. It is negated by the Charter of Rights. It is negated by the for greater certainty provision in the bill. And Mr. Speaker, this is a really important bill. And in terms of, as a member of the Jewish community who has felt this hate, every major organization in my community supports this bill. It is a really important bill to get hate off our streets, to make sure criminals get off our streets, to make sure there's deterrence. And Mr. Speaker, I would call upon everyone to support this bill. Thank you very much.
Questions and comments, questions et commentaires, the honourable member.